It was one of the most anticipated space games of the year, yet the sentiment towards Kerbal Space Program 2 just continues to decline. We're now 7 months after the title launched into early access, and other than bug fixes, there hasn't been much in the way of significant updates made to the game. What's worse is that the communication from the developers seems to be at an all-time low, and it seems that the community team are not even able to address this issue of problematic comms. So, what is going on with the KSP2? Well, let's start with some context. Early Access launched in February this year. It launched alongside this roadmap, which you can see on the screen right here, which gave players indications on what to expect. Now, it should be noted that there's no dates on this roadmap, and that's important. There's also been no official word on how long the early access period is expected to last. But all that said, in further context, here's some history. The game was announced way back in August of 2019, with an initial release date of early 2020. This launch was to be for the full and complete product mind, not early access. The game was to be developed by Star Theory. Eventually, the game was delayed on to the third quarter of 2021, and publishers Take-Two then moved development of the game to a newly built studio that they owned themselves. Now, there's a lot of controversy going on around this time, with Take-Two being accused of poaching a third of Star Theory's dev team. Whether directly related to this or not, Star Theory later had to shut down. Then, in November 2020, KSP2 was delayed yet again into 2022, and would also feature a PlayStation and Xbox Series version. But by the middle of 2022, the game was delayed yet again, this time to 2023, and what's more, it was eventually revealed that after 3.5 years since being announced, the game would release into early access and not as a complete game. It would be great if this sorted out ended here, but unfortunately it doesn't. Now, my initial personal impressions of KSP2 back at the time were that it was a strong foundation, albeit one that at £50 or $50 was extremely overpriced. This impression was based upon the fact that the game was in early access. So yeah, it had a strong foundation, and let's keep in mind that the game was very bare in terms of features. There was also a roadmap that highlighted promised features. Meanwhile, the devs had said to expect bugs, but also that plenty of updates would be released for the games, and it would rapidly improve over the matter of months and the time that would follow. So sure, an early access title in many ways, and everything that would come along with that. But unfortunately, as the game hit the wider player base, more and more problems became apparent. Player numbers remained fairly low, and review scores on Steam were not at all encouraging. Today, 7 months later, things seem to be worse than ever. Not only does the game lack content, but not a single feature from the roadmap has been added to the game. What's more, features that were promised to be added rapidly after early access, such as re-entry heating, are still nowhere to be found. That said, to be perfectly fair to the development team here, as you can see on screen, they did release a work-in-progress video on the re-entry effects on the 1st of September. Now, it seems development is continuing on these features. However, the big caveat and the thing that seems to be upsetting the community a lot is that this feature has been promised for months and months at this point, ever since release, and, well, 7 months later, it's still not in the game, it's still being worked on. Now, whilst the game certainly has received updates, the vast majority of them focus on bug fixes, and it's been virtually nothing in terms of significant content updates. Understandably, the user reviews on Steam have seen a significant drop over recent times, largely because of this. The 30-day average review now sits at a score of just 27%, which is shockingly low. Many of the reviews refer to a lack of communication from the developers, lack of updates, buggy and broken gameplay mechanics, a distinct lack of content, and more. Now, player numbers, meanwhile, have also seen a significant hit. As of this recording, just 91 players have played the game on Steam, and that is abysmally low by any standards. The 24-hour peak isn't much better at just 148 players. Now, the really sad thing about all of this is that the game has an all-time peak of 11,812 players, which means that for an early access title, it got off to a good start, didn't it, really, all things considered. But beyond KSP2, it seems that the game's not only managed to piss off a lot of its own players, but it also appears to have damaged the player numbers of the first game. If we look at Steam charts for KSP1, we can see a significant drop off on players right here. Just look at that. Now, comments found online suggest that after all the hype and anticipation for KSP2 and the abject mess that resulted, many people simply cannot face returning to the original. They just had too much hope pinned on the sequel. Meanwhile, over on the forums for KSP2, the dev team seems to be extremely absent, very quiet. Now, it wasn't always that way back in the early days. Shortly after the early access release, it got off to a very good start with weekly or bi-weekly posts from the game's creative director. Today, things are very different. The last post from the creative director of any value regarding content updates was back at the start of July, so quite a few months back at this point. Elsewhere, the CM staff seem to be trying to tackle completely understandable and justified forum meltdowns over the lack of communication from the team, which promises that maybe one day soon the dev team will communicate a little bit more, and that plans are in the works for all of this, but they can't be discussed just yet. The typical stuff, the typical PR messages there. Now, all of this amounts to a sad and unfortunate look for KSP2. The Kerbal franchise for the longest time has been the darling of the games industry, and today I can't help but feel neither Intercept Games nor Take-Two know what to do with the game, and if they do, they certainly aren't talking publicly about it. Whilst the CM team have said more info will come soon, that is the drum that they have been beaten since March. Understandably, people's patience is starting to wear a little bit thin, and that is having an effect on both player numbers, user reviews and community sentiment. So yes, people understand that KSP2 is in early access and that means it doesn't come with all the bells and whistles of a full game. But by the same token, and any game in early access really arguably has even more responsibility towards the community than a regular game. The studio is asking for players after all to put down money and time investment on a game that is far from complete. The decent and respectable thing to do for any studio in these circumstances is to communicate effectively with the early access players. After all, these are your biggest fans, the players who are jumping in early and giving you the benefit of the doubt. Shutting them out just doesn't seem the way to handle things, does it? So time will tell how all of this is going to plan out and where it's going to head next. But either way, it really feels about time that at least some public conversations are had regarding this roadmap and the state of Kerbal Space Program today. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about all of this. Have you been trying KSP2 in recent times? Is it a game you are waiting for? You've been holding off to give it a try, or is it just not your cup of tea? But either way, whether you're on the inside of KSP2 or on the outside, what do you think of the overall way that the studio has been conducting themselves regarding this release? Do let me know. As always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys and girls next time.